The market doesn't know what keeps you up at night. It doesn't know when you want to retire, and it doesn't know how old you are. The simple truth is, the market doesn't care. But if you care, you've tuned into the right place. You're listening to Investor Resources, bringing clarity to the confusing world of finance. Here are your hosts of Investor Resources, Don Creech and Perry Sykes.
I'm Don Creech.
And I'm Perry Sykes, and welcome to the Investor Resources Podcast.
One of the major changes in market history occurred recently, and that was the death of Charlie Munger.
Indeed.
Of Berkshire Hathaway at just shy of 100 years. And that means that this annual meeting of Berkshire Hathaway shareholders was the first time there's ever been a meeting without Charlie by Warren Buffett's side.
Right.
And that just that caused a lot of people to think about what's next. I mean, how much longer can Warren Buffett go before he's not able to come? And will this still be an event like it has been for so many years? So this caused a lot of people to think about Charlie Munger and his contribution to the investment world. He's written books, one of which is Poor Charlie's Almanac.
Right.
That includes his apparently a famous 1986 Harvard School commencement speech, sharing a recipe for success in life. He said, you know, it's easy to lead a life of misery. You have to do certain things to be sure that you find yourself resilient enough to get through the hurdles that are going to come your way. And there's a list of things that came out of that speech that we thought we'd kind of touch on today. And the first one is basically, this is a list of things that you do not want to do. You need to be careful that you pay attention. This is important. You don't be impatient. Everybody tells you to be a long-term investor. That's what everything is based on. Now, part of that is a conflict of interest. Now, if you're pretty confident that you're going to live as long as Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger did, well, you could be a long-term investor. But in all my years in the business, I've never found anybody who expected to live that long.
Correct. And these days, in the world of social media, more times than not, people are trying to get rich by Friday instead of by the time they retire. It's like I don't. This other person got rich this week. I don't know why I shouldn't be rich this week also. And boy, oh boy, being impatient can complicate your investment issues so quickly because the mistakes you can make these days are so enormous that they can also wipe you out by Friday. And people forget that. It's all a matter of just get rich and make sure you get rich quick. That's the important part. And that, as far as Charlie Munger was concerned, that's completely opposite.
So his guidance here is basically, one, you need to know yourself. You need to know what your real risk tolerance is. And
Sure.
That's not a function of answering 10 questions with your financial advisor. It's understanding where your pain point is and paying attention to actually what you own. Because if you don't pay attention, you probably don't have anybody else who's doing that for you. Even if most financial advisors, once you set up your portfolio based on the 10 or 20 question risk questionnaire, it's pretty much fixed. They're not going to make major changes. It's one of the reasons we don't use modern portfolio theory anymore. We used to use professional Wall Street firms to manage client money. And when '08 crash came, they just basically sat on their hands and said, well, it'll recover, just forget it for now. No respect for whether or not you might need your money because you're retired. It's just that you are supposed to be a long-term investor under all circumstances. And you do need to be patient under most market conditions, but paying attention has its rewards. Now, one of the things that's really happened recently, again, it happened during COVID and actually this week has showed up one more time, and that is meme stock investing.
Sure.
This is following a guru on social media who says there's a lot of short position in this company. It's about ready to go bankrupt. Let's get together a bunch of people and see if we can put the screws to them. So you end up with GameStop and AMC and some others where there's some rapid change in pricing, and individual retail investors basically are building a house of straw when they're trying to make an investment of that sort, because that's not investment, that's gambling. And the
That's
majority of
gambling.
retail investors, even in the recent round of GameStop this last week, the majority of trades were losing trades. It's an
Right.
arena where the professionals do win, and the average investor is the sucker in the trades.
And never forget, if you look at the meme stops, if you look at GameStop in particular, no one has ever said, "Hey, you should buy this." It is such a high quality, financially sound institution that your money's safe there. We should all go invest there because it's a great place to be for the long term. Now, it's like this is something we can probably manipulate on the short term, so let's go do that. And that never ends well for everyone involved. Um, but that's one thing you need to watch. Look at the quality of what you're investing in. It does matter. It does matter what you're buying. Are other people buying it? Is there good cash flow in any holding that you have, or is this something where if Reddit comes out on the wrong side, all of a sudden everybody's gone, the liquidity dries up, and you're stuck with it anyway? That's what happens. That's why you don't want to. That's why you want to look for quality, and you don't want to build a house of straw portfolio.
Well, and that's a function of paying attention. Who's going to do that for you? And what's the process? That's the a fundamental
Sure.
to paying attention, is having a process, having a discipline to know when you're going to review, what you're reviewing for, and being willing to make a decision when you find out it's not working the way you had originally assumed. Where is your pain
There you
point?
go.
And that's an individual issue. And if you're retired and modestly successful, then your pain points might be pretty shallow because you don't want to go through another 25 or 50% drawdown in your whole portfolio.
Absolutely.
So the other issue that came up here is that you actually can invest anywhere. Just because you haven't done that before, or it's not part of what was recommended as a diversified portfolio, doesn't mean that it should be off the table, but you do need to understand what you're doing and why you are adding it.
You bet.
For
That was big on
many,
Warren Buffett's list. Yeah, never invest in something you don't understand. Doesn't matter how well it's doing. If you have no idea why it's making any sort of move, you also won't have any idea why that could change, and so you have no idea when to make your next move out. So you do need to worry about, what do you know about these things? What do you know about the competency of the people who are running that particular security? And you do need to understand some of the basic underpinnings of what's going on in any security you're going to buy, just so you're not completely blindsided by something you never saw coming.
but that doesn't mean you should eliminate anything that you don't know about. You can always study and learn.
Yep.
I remember early on, I had recommended to a client that we invest in an international fund. And he said since World War II, he had never invested in anything outside the United States. But at that time, international markets were actually entering strongly into the global marketplaces, areas of financial capital, industrial development, and exporting to the United States, where we were the major buyer of the stuff they were doing. It was creating great prosperity overseas. So
Sure.
he did make the investment as I recommended, but he was willing to accept that times were changing. So it's a function here that you can invest anywhere. Just because you haven't done it before doesn't mean you can't do the research and give it consideration. It may, in fact, be a real enhancement to what you're trying to achieve financially. It means you have to have an open mind. Open mind to opportunities also means you have an open mind to limiting your downside risk when necessary and markets change. That's
That's very
the
important.
that's the next don't, and that is don't. I'm on my wrong button here. There we go. Is don't keep your own counsel. I mean,
Right.
you just because you think you had a couple of successful investments that you don't need to talk to anybody else and get some additional advice. So
And like you said, Don, you want to talk about the ability to learn from other people? Holy smokes, the entire field of finance is full of people willing to say, here's what I did, and boy, was it a huge mistake, and here's why. So you don't need to go make that same mistake again. If you're willing to dig in, find out what they were talking about, find out the mistakes they made, you can learn from other people's mistakes. You can scratch those off your list of big errors I don't need to make in my own portfolio by looking around and see what other people are doing, what's happened to them, taking it to heart and saying, okay, I'm not going to make that same mistake either. That exponentially increases your ability to bring some safety into your portfolio by watching what has hurt other investors.
uh, almost anybody who has been investing for some time has mistakes. It's
Yep.
I remember when I was young in the business, in the first couple of years in the business, and this was after a major bear market, and a salesman came by the office and was talking with us, and he asked me, "Well, how much money have you lost for your clients?" And I thought, "What? What do you mean? You're supposed to invest to make money for your clients, not lose it?" And I said, "Well, none." He said, "Well, son, you haven't been in the business long enough. Let me show you something." And he brought out a notebook of client statements that were loss after loss after loss because of the bear market. And he'd been
Sure.
in the business quite a while and just basically had severely damaged his clients and him emotionally. I mean, because that's not why he was there. And frankly, from that time, it took quite a few years before things actually got back above water. So
Sure.
that's important to remember. You
Yep.
need to learn from other people, and I have found it's only on an occasional person who won't share what they've done wrong, things to avoid,
Yep.
and opportunities that you might be considering that might make sense. But again, you have to know what you're doing. As we just covered, point two, don't build a house of straw. I mean, you need to know what it is you're doing. You have to understand why you're doing it. So that takes some time, education, discipline, and I repeat again, process. What's the process? We have a disciplined process that is repeatable. We do it over and over and over again to respond to where the market is today.
Sure.
One of the other things that Charlie Munger advised against was not changing your mind.
Right.
Well, I know I made that decision and I did a lot of research for it, and it took time and we thought about it and I discussed it with my spouse. So we're good to go. I know it's down 15%, now it's down 20, but we took so long to research this. It's got to be a good deal. And I saw that decision process, that rationalization process repeated over and over and over again after the tech bubble finally topped out and worked its way
Right.
down. It's almost a
Right.
3-year decline, and people still said, but it's such a good company. It can't be a bad decision until the pain point was so severe.
You
There was
bet.
nothing to do but to sell, usually at the bottom.
And it's one of the things we say all the time at Investor Resources. Anytime we make an investment decision, it always comes with the caveat: check your ego at the door. It doesn't matter how sure you were this was going to be a great idea, this was going to be a great place to invest money. If it's not working out, it wasn't a good idea. And it doesn't matter why it's not a good idea. It's moving against you. Cut your losses short. You have to change your mind when things are, the reality is not happening, unfolding the way you thought it would. And you can build a massive case for why you're right, or you can just look at the number and say, you know what? I'm losing money here. That's wrong. And you have to change your mind. You have to make a move at that point.
So I'm just going to point out this is a double negative. Don't
Right.
change your mind.
Right.
So, Charlie
Luckily,
should
this isn't a grammar class. So, yeah.
Charlie should have phrased this in a more positive way. Be flexible, be open that maybe you made a mistake. Because
There you go.
if you're investing over any significant period of time, you are going to make mistakes. That is just part of the activity. So do not let your ego get the best of you in that arena.
You bet.
So there's some other things that typically happen, and that's because people are chasing, they are chasing the voice of the crowd, and that certainly is true with the meme stocks today, and looking for TikTok for investment advice or Twitter for investment advice. What do you do? Call it Xer now, since you don't have Twitter.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever you heard on X. Yeah.
But the investing successfully is not rocket science. It takes basic tools. It takes a disciplined process. You have to spend some time in both in terms of getting started and then in following, staying current, making decisions on a regular basis. The decisions may be, there's nothing to do this week. Or it may be, one of these positions is not working out and I can't find any real justification for my original assumptions. So let's get rid of that, because I have things on my watch list that are certainly doing better and would have been a better choice. Let's see what we can find sifting through that list once again and improving the quality of my portfolio.
There you go.
Yeah. If you don't want to do that, you can get a financial advisor to do. That's what we do for our clients. They want to go do something else. They don't want to be bothered with the timeliness that decisions require in market trading today. So basically, markets are dynamic. They're constantly changing. And if you need, preserving your accounts is not for slackers. Somebody's got to pay attention to this, and that's our business. We are fiduciaries in every engagement. That's an important part for you to know, that the party involved in overseeing your account isn't on commission, doesn't have a conflict of interest, has a system for periodically reviewing and making adjustments in your account to accommodate the changes that are happening in this economy. This market is not your father's or your grandfather's market. COVID and global central bank intervention changed the fundamental operations of the market, and the SEC is still considering more changes that they are going to force on the financial marketplace, both at a company level and at a financial advisor, investment advisor firm level. Know what you're doing. You got to figure this out. Otherwise, you get stuck with a decision that you are going to regret at some point. But if you want to talk to us about it, what you're doing and how we would modify anything that you're looking at, we have a recommendation on positions in your portfolio, give us a call. Send us an email. It's a freebie just to chat with us, and we'll be glad to give you our opinion one-on-one. I think that's a wrap for today. You have a great day, and register to subscribe to our podcast. Register for the emails or the webinars that we do, and we'll talk to you again. Have a great day.